cutting edge guests, awesome, uncensored, jaw-dropping information, plus funny memes, good deeds, and loads of laughter. Kind of have it all. Ladies and gentlemen, if your soul's awake, then welcome, because you're in the right place. Welcome back to the Sovereign Soul Show, you divine lions and lionesses. I'm joined once again by Brad Olsen, who is exposing Antarctica's dark secrets, the hidden bases, UFOs, giants, the inner Earth gravity wells of our hollow planet, and the ice wall truths. These are the forbidden mysteries they did not want disclosed. An advanced UFO craft, which is coming out live this year, being announced by the White House. This is the evidence, the patterns, and the questions they don't want asked for the last several generations, and Brad is delivering it once again in part 2 of our series. Buckle up, dear souls, as this one goes deep, and we look forward to seeing you in the live chat. We're live, we're here, the two Brads are back, and I'm the Brad who was late to the show, the interviewer with his guest, Brad Olsen, who is just a rock solid man, and truly appreciate everything that you've done for the world, Brad, as an intrepid explorer and the Indiana Jones of our time, as Dr. Michael Salla says.
Kind words. Well, nice to see you again, Brad, and thanks for having me back on the Sovereign Soul Show. As you know, there's so much that we didn't cover in part 1 in this book that we will get to in this interview, and lots of secrets to unravel.
Exactly. Great. How's my audio coming in, by the way?
Now much better.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Great. Yeah, this is a fantastic book, everybody. It is called The Secrets of Antarctica, The Untold History of the Ice Continent. In case you're listening to this on the podcast, you're not watching the broadcast, that's what I'm holding in my hand. This is the 8th book, I believe it is now, for Brad, who has written it. You can go to the link below the show, wherever you're hearing this or watching this, and go to cccpublishing.com. Get your copies as well if you're in the States. And Brad, for those of us who are overseas or outside the USA, like myself, can we order this on Amazon, or should we still do it on CCC Publishing before we get going on the interview?
Yeah, of course, it's available on Amazon as well as an audiobook on Audible, which is now owned by Amazon. But if you wanted a signed copy, then the best place to go is to cccpublishing.com. That's our website, and all my books are available. Actually, this is my 11th book, Brad.
11.
Master
number 11. That's awesome. That is fantastic. And for those of you who don't know, folks, Brad is also a publisher of multiple other authors there. So Michael Jaco, Leo Zagami, Laura Eisenhower, and several others. So you can browse that repository at CCC Publishing. And again, if you're outside the US, like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Sweden, South Africa, we have listeners who are on here all the time. Netherlands, you can get the book on Amazon, CCC Publishing, Secrets of Antarctica, Brad Olsen. Search for his name, you'll find it, and you will love what you are learning, because this is all fact. There's no conspiracy theory. Brad, why don't you just do us a favor, if you don't mind, and give everybody a little bit of a background from yourself, how you got down to the icy continent, and what inspired you to start writing 11 books.
Yeah, wow. Big open-ended question. I'll try to make it brief. Basically, I took off for Japan in 1992, where I taught English and self-financed a trip around the world. And I made it to every continent except for South America and Antarctica. And so this was a way for me to go down and visit them both. About 8 years ago, I lost my rent-controlled apartment in San Francisco, California, at no fault to me. It was just an owner move-in. But I got a nice settlement. So I turned a little lemons into lemonade and began that trip with my girlfriend at the time. And I bought a vehicle in Santiago, Chile, a Ford Expedition that was already outfitted for overland travel. So that made it much easier. And then I started making my way down there after going up to Peru, Bolivia, all the way down through Argentina to the southernmost city in the world, Ushuaia, Argentina. And that's when we got passage on a sailboat to Antarctica for 26 days. Wow. And crossing the Drake Passage, which is notoriously the most stormy seas in the world. Yeah. But all the while, I was looking into these subjects that interest us so much in the field of studying Antarctica. As far as I know, I'm the only researcher who is self-financed to trip down there and ask the big questions. Are there massive craft under the ice? Is there antediluvian civilization or pyramids poking through? Any signs of advanced civilizations, and anything like UFO paranormal hotspots or giants? And yep. I was kind of surprised with some of the answers I got, but for the most part, they always said no. And that's not that they were holding back on me. I don't think they were. They just didn't know. And they had no intel on that.
Wild. So again, the Indiana Jones of our time. You know, you're literally putting it out there and doing it on your own, and you're uncovering all of these things, and you're going to those places, whether it's been Egypt, Peru, Ollantaytambo, Machu Picchu. You and I we've walked, not in the same shoes, but we've walked the same footsteps and footpaths and whatnot through some of the sacred sites in the United States as well. For me, Sedona, Pyramid Lake, Death Valley, whatnot. And you are one of the most sought after speakers on the planet for years and years and decades, based on the research and the connections that you have. And what I deeply appreciate too is everything in your books, whether it's Beyond Esoteric, Future Esoteric, etc., The Secrets of Antarctica now, is it's documented. So you've done FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act, if anybody doesn't know what that means, to get documents from the government, to do interviews with researchers who have these access to it, whether it's Admiral Byrd's journal, and receiving information to that effect all across up until today. So before we really do a deep dive here, what the White House just came out with on March 17th is they registered the website aliens.gov. So a news flash for everybody. The White House registered a website, aliens.gov. This is the year of mass disclosure. We just saw 48 hours ago Terminator type robots at the White House, of course, saying it's AI robots walking out with First Lady of the United States. You know, now your kids are going to be taught by AI robots like Play-Doh. They can access live. How great is that? I do question some of this, like going, wow, that's a little too much. But we know it's a year of disclosure. How does it grab you in the community that you've served, Brad, with the truth after all these years, to have vindication that the United States government is going to do something about aliens, disclosure, and ET craft?
Yeah, and this is really monumental for a government like the United States and a president like Trump.
Yeah,
to tweet about ordering the military armed forces to release everything they have on UAPs, UFOs, and extraterrestrial life. Nobody's ever done that, not in the White House. And so this is a very big step. Remember Jimmy Carter, when he was running for president, he said he had a UFO experience. He saw one in Georgia when he was governor.
Wow.
And he said one of the top things he wants to do is release the UFO files. And he goes into a meeting, probably with the NSA, and finds that the information they gave him must have been very troubling, because his staffers say that he came out of that meeting visibly upset, almost on the verge of tears. And of course, nothing ever came of it with Jimmy Carter. Ronald Reagan and his wife, Nancy, also saw a UFO driving over Mulholland Drive in LA. And he too was stymied. So this is a very big leap forward for a sitting president to tweet that he was going to do this and take out aliens.gov and alien.gov. So apparently singularly, maybe there's just one alien that they're going to feature on that website.
Yeah.
But as I say, Brad, especially as it relates to Antarctica, all roads lead to Antarctica. Of course, no roads lead to Antarctica, but it's a metaphor for everything in the disclosure field has some kind of element in Antarctica. And I often say in interviews that disclosure, a real meaningful disclosure, could very well come out of Antarctica.
Yep.
Just one of these massive motherships or something else, dead or living alien bodies, perhaps, could change together.
It's truly remarkable, Brad. You're right. And on the back of your book, you showed the back jacket of the book. I'm going to read this. This is a quote that Brad has placed on his book, which is also a quote that you can find in history. You can Google it, Brave it, Claude AI it, Chat GPT it, Grok it, whatnot. You will find this quote to this direct man. Here's what it is. The German submarine fleet is proud of having built for the Führer in another part of the world, a Shangri-La part of the world, a Shangri-La land, an impregnable fortress. And that quote comes from German Navy Grand Admiral Karl Donitz, who was the last president of United Germany. Now here we are, nearly a century later from this quote, and we're talking about Antarctica, a Shangri-La, Admiral Byrd and the expedition down there, and Operation High Jump, and then another one, Witness Craft, which then also have flown over the Capitol back in the day. And Laura Eisenhower, another author of yours, has put forward, the FOIA information too about UFO craft and then the battle that took place down there. I think that's a great place to start and bring it up to here. We're covering off the Nazi bases and why you think the Antarctic Treaty happened. And a little bit of this, everybody, will kind of mirror some of the content that we've shared on part 1 of our episode and continue to build here in part 2.
Yeah, and Laura Eisenhower's book, Awakening to the Truth Frequency, it has elements of Antarctica in it, because one of her whistleblowers who she quotes in the book is Dan Cooper. And Dan Cooper had some information about not really a surrender, but certainly a truce after the UFO flyover of the Capitol building in 1952. So I have all these headlines, and this is a picture of the flyover. It happened not once, but 4 days later, 2 times. And on the second time, they didn't even attempt to harass those craft when they hovered over the Capitol building. And according to Dan Cooper and Laura Eisenhower, whose great-grandfather, Dwight D. Eisenhower, was the president-elect, but he wasn't president yet. It was still under Truman. And when they couldn't deal with these craft, they couldn't shoot them down, they couldn't dissuade them from returning a second time, that there was an uneasy truce with the U.S. government, in so much that they didn't want us to go back and do another high jump attack, to say, look, we can fly over your most sensitive airspace and there's nothing you can do about it. And so that smacks the quote from Admiral Byrd at the end of High Jump, when he said that we would face an enemy that could fly pole to pole at incredible speeds.
Yeah.
When these headlines came out, Brad, I think every UFO researcher at the time thought that they were alien craft hovering over Washington, D.C., but any researcher now worth their weight in salt would agree that those were the craft that could fly pole to pole at incredible speeds.
Yeah. Analog photos of those craft posted in the Washington Post, New York Times, Los Angeles. At the time, I believe it was the LA Tribune, Los Angeles Times. And right around that same time, my cousins, who are on the Wozny side, who lived in Los Angeles, remembered Battle for Los Angeles. They remembered prior to that, in World War II, that the whole coastline was worrying about the Japanese Imperial Navy coming in and taking over America. So they were just outside of LA. And yeah, obviously that cousin of mine has since passed, because they would have been in the 90s, years old now, but obviously their offspring, my other second cousins or third cousins, I guess, however it works, they're in their 60s and 70s now. They remember distinctly that whole bottle for Los Angeles. And for people who don't know about this, and you can go back into archives, it's on microfiche and libraries still, which is amazing, that there was a threat of a massive, or what was considered a threat of a massive saucer, anti-gravitics, that hovered over Los Angeles. And the United States Navy and the United States Army artillery expended all ordnance to shoot it down. So we have howitzer artillery pieces, and then the Army Air Force, because then it wasn't the United States Air Force yet, it was the United States Army Air Corps, rather, was launched, and they couldn't shoot it down. Yet you had fragmentation. So you had fragging that happened. There were people who died from the expended ordnance that was blowing off this ship that didn't return fire, didn't do anything, was just hovering peacefully over it. Something out of like the Independence Day movie we saw Will Smith back in the 90s, a blockbuster back then. The same thing happened. So now we're up to here. Now we have Nazis that have went to a Shangri-La impregnable fortress in Antarctica, according to the German Navy Grand Admiral Karl Donitz. What else should people know about Antarctica, Brad, that you have, witnessed, had accounts told to you personally, and then have found through the information with regards to this, what seems to be an incredible civilization, and other civilizations, non-human, which live there and maybe living there now?
Yeah, well, then when you describe the Battle of LA, which I have a picture in my book, Future Esoteric of, you can clearly see that it's a UFO anti-gravitic craft that they were trying to shoot down, to no avail. They couldn't take it down. Same thing with the Battle of High Jump, when these UFOs came up and out of the water and out of the ice, that they also tried to shoot them down, to no avail. So these craft, which were probably backward engineered German craft, were very advanced, and they had some kind of force field around it that would prevent typical ordinances from hitting the craft. It was a very one-sided battle that took place in February 1947, called the Battle of High Jump, and it was a one-ended rout. It was the German craft didn't get hit, didn't lose anything, where we lost a destroyer called the USS Maddox. This is our reproduction on the
USS Maddox actually sank there, Brad?
Yeah, they sank it.
Shoot.
Best can be described as a direct energy weapon, or the Tesla death ray, which he had developed. And that was the big push now then, to find these exotic weapons. By the way, they're using lasers in this latest skirmish in the Middle East. There are videos now. They're trying to shoot down rockets with lasers. So that technology, it's actually been around for a while, and to utilize it with these flying crafts is really another game changer. That's why the U.S. had to acquiesce to the Antarctic Germans down there in the late 1940s and early 1950s, because they couldn't do anything about it. So they were just trying to bide their time, as were the Germans, who were just digging in even deeper and building their New Berlin Science City, as well as a couple bases. I've been able to locate two closer to the surface, well, at least connections to the base. And one is called the Thule Refuge, and the other is called Base 211, which was the first base that they built. And that was even on the newspaper headlines in 1941, before the U.S. even joined the fight in World War II. And this was also on the New York Times. And it says Nazi bases in Antarctica are reported. So they knew they were building down there, and the British were spying on them as well. And I went to some of the British spy stations on the Palmer Peninsula. It's called Port Lockroy, which is now a museum, and then another one on the Vernansky base. And keep in mind, the British cracked the German Enigma code midway through World War II. So they were listening to everything that they were saying, and the British were picking up intel that they're bringing down huge amounts of material and personnel throughout the war years. So they knew they had a big problem on their hands, and that's what Operation High Jump was tasked to do, to seek and destroy any base and also to try to recover 2 UFO craft, because they knew that they were bringing down all their best hardware from Germany at the end of the war.
Wow.
Neither of those tasks succeeded.
Do you think, or you know, that the deep state dark beings have been removed from Antarctica now, Brad?
I can't say with any kind of certainty. I do believe they exist down there.
Mm-hmm.
They had a traditional base, if you want to call that, maybe even one of these defunct motherships that there are known to be 3 of. They got the nickname Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria after Columbus's 3 ships. And they're, from what I can tell, they're all defunct. They're not able to fly anymore, but they could still have a power source, and they could still have a way to create energy and be functional in that sense. One of them is what Spartan 1 told Linda Moulton Howe. I'd say that is a very good possibility of one of the 3. And then the other one happens to be no less than on the Antarctica, on the German base called New Schwabenland. And this is in 2013. You can go on the Wayback Machine. It's called the Conan base.
Yep.
There's the GPS coordinates. 2013, they did an excavation of it. And this is what it turns out to be, some kind of giant machine under the ice. And this is what it would look like today. You're not going to see much if you just go to it. You have to use the Wayback
scrubbed
year 2013.
Yeah, it's been scrubbed. They try to scrub it, hide it, Google Maps, Google Earth covering it up. Wow, including the pyramids and stuff down there. Well, okay, so let's talk about pyramids. Pyramids and stargates down there.
Yeah, and that's where it starts getting interesting, because then you could make a very good case that there were some kind of advanced civilization with high technology that was working on or left behind these pyramids from a very advanced civilization. And in my book, I chronicle several different pyramid sites and include the GPS coordinates. So I'll let people make up their own mind, but some of them are pretty compelling. They're four-sided. They have what look to be the shape of a pyramid. One of them is even on an official map as just pyramid. And the most famous one is the Great Pyramid of Antarctica that was featured on Ancient Aliens, and it has 4 sides and is very symmetrical. But the jury is still out on any of these, and that is because when I talked to a tour guide company, I showed him some of these pictures and said, "Can you go to here?" And he says, "Oh yeah, I know where that is." I said, "Really? What do you think of it?" And he called it a nun attack, which means an attractive mountain poking through the ice. I said, "Well, why do you call it that?" He said, "I don't know. We just fly over it and point it out to the people on the trip." I said, "Well, have you ever put your plane down and checked it out and explored it?" He says, No, we just fly over it." So I think until somebody goes there and takes a sample or climbs it, that this Great Pyramid of Antarctica might be intelligently built. And if it is, that there's a complete game changer right there, because then it would be a high-tech civilization that built it and left behind other pyramids. My friend David Hatcher Childress, he talked about it on Ancient Aliens, and his quote was this, that there's another one in the Shackleton Range, and he said, quote, "If this gigantic pyramid in Antarctica is an artificial structure, it would probably be the oldest pyramid on the planet. In fact, it might be the master pyramid that all the other pyramids on planet Earth were designed to look like."
Wow. Whoa.
So that's why I talk about mysteries and the untold history, because Antarctica's got it going on. If you know where to look and you know some of these locations, you get some pretty astounding results.
Well, that's fascinating. And let's go into the theory of pole shifts. And is north really north and is south south, or is south actually north and north is south?
Well, if you're in inner Earth, apparently they all do the role reversal. At least that's what it says on some of the Tibetan maps that were acquired by the Germans when they went to Tibet.
In the 20s and 30s.
This is their map of the inner Earth.
Interesting.
And then the Anunnaki Society adapted it and made it their own map. And so this comes out of at the end of World War II, the Russians were the first to get to Moscow. So the Soviet army, and more importantly, the KGB, got to Berlin and got all these documents and took them back to Moscow to analyze them. And then when they looked at it more closely, they realized the Tibetans had this knowledge of this inner Earth, and they too were very interested in knowing that. So the Germans put together several expeditions to Tibet and actually made their way to somewhere where they came back with a cache of documents that they were able to translate. And in those translations, this is the blow up of what they found, and that is your inner Earth, where you have gravity affecting a different way, a central sun. I really don't know how to wrap my head around or explain that.
Yep.
But when you're there, the geographical South Pole, once you're inside it, it becomes the magnetic North Pole.
Interesting.
Everything kind of flips around on the inside.
Yeah, I remember a while ago, I was at, this one was on Vancouver Island. There's a Buddhist monastery there, and I met two Rinpoches. And it was one of those things, I was just guided to drive over there, look into this place a number of years ago, staying on the island. And they have maps that are don't know if there are any more at this point in time. We're going back 2016, 2017. And there are maps that look very similar to what you just showed there, and was also in one of your esoteric books as well, that you see this kind of, it's like you're going through a labyrinth on the outer core of Earth, the planet, and then into the inside, and everything hollow and everything has its own place, which is incredible, as well as other states of water which are in there. Remarkable. And even in our oceans, which not part of this show to cover, but there's so much which has been hidden from us, and so much we don't know, that we really should have a thirst for that knowledge. And part of quenching that thirst is certainly this book, Brad, because it seems to me that the giants, whether they go down the biblical reference of Nephilim, and Creator wanted to wipe out the giants and recreate humanity, in thine own image, but they seem to have been purposefully, whether they're benevolent, malevolent, I guess, for sure. If they're eating people, you kind of don't, want them running around, purposefully hidden away from society and even eradicated in some cases. What did you discover with regards to giants that you have in the book, and then also that you talk about from time to time down there?
And just to show one other map of inner Earth,
Agartha,
land,
Agartha
races, which was said to hold the place for the giants. That's where they lived down there. And so there's a whole chapter in the book about the Patagonian giants, and when they were first discovered by Magellan in 1520, the historian on the ship said that their shoulders only came up to the waists of the giants. They're so much larger than the Europeans at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just quite fascinating because they are reportedly from this inner earth realm. And this is in the book, The Smoky God, of a father and son Norwegian fisherman couple that went far north and found that northern entrance.
Wow.
Again, I can't explain how gravity would work, but they sailed in and then underneath and around and eventually popped out in Antarctica, all the while being introduced and finding themselves in the company of very, very large human-like entities. I wouldn't say that they were human because we don't know anything or any people that can be that big. Even the tallest giants in the world, such as Robert Waldo from Alton, Illinois, he was 8'11", but he had an extreme pituitary gland affliction that kept his body growing throughout his entire life. Where these were, and even the historian on Magellan ship said that they're very well proportioned. It wasn't like they had this kind of disease, that they were that size naturally. And of course they met females, and even the children were much taller than the Europeans. So they do appear to be somewhat different race altogether.
Yep. Yeah, certainly are. And we also have evidence across the planet, of what appears to be fossilized giants. We've images of mountains. Here's a man crawling from high above fossilized toes of a giant, perhaps. And then we have this, snowy face. That one I don't believe is in Antarctica or something like this. Looks pretty cool. Like never-ending story. Remember the rock?
Yeah.
That would stand up, whatnot. So yeah, truly amazing as well. And then the pyramids and the UFOs and the craft which are down there, and that Antarctic Treaty still is in effect today, right?
It is, and this also has something to do with Byrd's final trip down there, and the Antarctica Germans still living down there to this day. I'll just give you a little anecdote that Stuart Swerdlow, who says he's one of the last surviving Montauk boys and worked in those experiments on Long Island, New York, when he was a young kid in the 1970s. He says he's got contacts around the world, including someone who claims that they live in New Schwabenland, in New Berlin City.
Wow.
And he says that this person came out and said, we want to tell the world we're still here. We're multi-generation of German and Nordic people that live down here, but we don't know how they would react to hearing that there was a Fourth Reich that was still in existence. And I think he's right that it wouldn't be taken too well, that we might find that we have another enemy that we got to go to war with. So the whole story of the Antarctic Germans living down there and thriving below the ice at the continental level. We don't even have to go into inner Earth or even into a cave system. Just what's below the 2 miles of polar plateau kind of feel like you're in inner Earth. And several other anecdotes of people that lived and grew up in the New Berlin City and have stories to tell, one of which was called the New Berlin Base, and it's on the Project Camelot website. Carrie Cassidy, a colleague of mine, had someone translate it from German, and it starts out by this guy saying, yeah, I grew up and lived in this environment. There were just big domes of ice. And I should preface that by saying that Antarctica is the most volcanically active continent in the world. There are 14 active volcanoes and 93 geothermal features. So you'd have the propensity to create these large under ice domes there. And then every so often, a chimney, a hole in the ice for the heat to escape.
Wow. Yeah, it still boggles the mind when you just attempt to wrap your head around there's an entire society living down there completely, mostly cut off, not completely cut off. So catch my words here. And then they have the high tech, which, we've seen friend of yours, and you also published Billy Carson's books, has said publicly several times, when I go to meetings at Space Force in Colorado Springs, every one of us with companies there, and Elon's company is there, Northrop Grumman, all the military contractors are there, are using technology that is at a minimum 300 years ahead of anything commercially available today, that the public is aware of. Right. Like, absolutely. Star Trek, and probably beyond Star Trek at this point, which is down there, and is still effectively, likely operational as well. Like, man, what do you perceive might be happening this year, Brad, from a disclosure standpoint? What we were talking about earlier here with the alien and aliens.gov registration.
Yeah, well, if disclosure were to come from Antarctica, might have to wait until next season, starting in November till right around now in middle of March. Everybody starts clearing out of the bases down there with the onset of fall and winter coming. And when all the bases clear out and it's just the skeleton crew, there's only 1,000 people on the entire continent. So you don't get the feeling that we live in a overpopulated world when you're down in Antarctica at all. So the big story that came out this year, and you mentioned this in the intro, was the gravity holes that were detected, just sucking in gravity down at the continental level underneath the ice. And what that means, I think we're still trying to understand, but it probably corresponds with what was discovered the last few years before this, and that were cosmic rays coming out of Antarctica, as well as radio waves that they detected came from 70 or so miles below the continental level. So there's something down there. Yeah, and maybe they're even trying to communicate with us.
Okay. I just, this is the first time hearing about this. I want to restate this from a frame of mind for people to gather. So down in Antarctica, there's cosmic rays shooting out of a hole, gravity wells, and radio waves are shooting out of a hole in Antarctica.
All three.
It's like somebody farted, and you're like, wow, what was going on here? I mean, not to be completely nasty about it, but just try to give some context to people. Like, all of a sudden you have cosmic rays, which are only supposed to be from the sun,
coming into the earth. That's right.
Yeah, coming into the earth, passing through our bodies, passing through everything, trillions and quadrillions or whatever the number is, per second. And now it's been discovered it's coming out of it, and radio waves. And can they tap into these frequencies? These radios,
they're just detecting them, but I don't think they've been able to translate or understand what they mean, if there is any kind of meaning. But you bring in an interesting point, and that is with the whole cosmology of a central sun within the earth.
Yep.
The cosmic rays would be coming out. And what better place than the giant hole in the ice that could lead down deep into the continental landmass, and then a connection into the inner earth. So that's why I think more studies are necessary and more groups going down there to determine this stuff. And they go down with new equipment every year too. And that's why you get new findings that are coming out.
Yeah. Leaking it, I guess, in a way for us. Yeah. In the pyramids of Giza, especially the Italian researchers last year with their stuff published, and Jay Anderson, putting it out there, and others that, they've done the LiDAR scans and the direct sonar down to the bottom underneath the pyramids of Giza. They're actually raised 2 miles above a massive city. And they just disclosed a few days ago that there is a massive Sphinx, largest one in the world, 2 miles below the plateau, the Giza plateau. So everybody's in Egypt running around. We have our camels, we have our homes, we have our vehicles, Tourists are coming in, taking pictures of the very little bit of a top of these 3 pyramids, which are, but there's 2 miles. They go 2 miles below the earth. And you had mentioned the Great Pyramid of Antarctica is about 2 miles. With what is below there, Brad?
Yeah, 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers on 4 sides.
2 by 2? Got it. Thank you.
So a little under 1.5 miles, but it's still, that's huge. That is way bigger than the Great Pyramid in Egypt.
Yep. So then, with the pyramid foundations we are learning about over the last several decades around the world, it almost seems as if they are all built off the same framework. They have the same blueprint. If the pyramid goes all the way down, you're probably going to have some type of water and piezoelectric material like granite rock, quartz crystal that's running through it to empower things, be a transceiver and a receiver. By the way, I am not an archaeologist or a pyramidologist or whatnot. I'm just going after all of this stuff because I geeked out on these things as a kid in a big way. Nova was one of my favorite shows, the Sci-Fi Network. And I think Fox Mulder would be jumping up and down right now with everything that's being said and that's coming out. But what else might be down there, which we have kind of touched on? Stargates. We mentioned Stargates already, but we didn't go into that yet. Is there anything else that you have that people might be able to read about the book when they get their autographed copy from you at cccpublishing.com?
Well, keep in mind that when Buzz Aldrin went down there, and here's some pictures of Buzz, second man to walk on the moon.
Yeah.
He goes down there, and then he makes this very famous tweet: "We are all in danger. It is evil itself." And it's interesting that he posted that with a photo of the Antarctic pyramid, this pyramid right here.
Wow.
And also the Russian journalist who uncovered all of the U-boat maps, his name is Nikolai Subotin. He did a video where he was describing the U-boat routes going underneath the ice to the pyramid. So there's something about that mountain that attracts certain people to think that it is something below the ice. Like you said, it's obviously poking through the ice, so we don't even see the foundation of this pyramid. And where that is could very well be some kind of lost city, or perhaps a grid network of other buildings around it, like you'd see at pyramid sites on the surface of the earth.
Wild. And there's still active military down there in a huge way from multiple nations. Obviously, America likely has the strongest presence right now in Space Force. Last I checked, I believe it was a Space Force base I saw was established down there.
Yeah, but they're not allowed to do military activities such as nuclear testing or even training like they did in Operation High Jump. That was the cover story. Per the Antarctic Treaty, and you did mention that earlier, and I said I was going to explain how the Operation High Jump and then Admiral Byrd's 5th and final trip down there, which according to whistleblower Captain Mark Richards, who Kerry Cassidy has reprinted 2 books based on their conversation, he said, and I bought his book called Operation High Jump, which is like a military manual of everything that the U.S. knew about it. But he said that the U.S. wanted a UFO more than anything in the world. And so in order to prevent them from attacking again, they went down and the Germans flew them probably a older generation or a clunkier version of a UFO and landed it on an aircraft carrier, and they whisked it away. That was Byrd's final trip down there. And then he came back and he did those Longines watch interviews, and he kept mentioning the land beyond the pole. Said it several times in that interview and a couple times before that we should go to this land beyond the pole. But that really doesn't make any sense, because what we're told is the polar plateau is hundreds of miles in all directions, just a flat ice shelf. So how could you go beyond the pole? There would be nothing to see, unless he was giving a veiled description of the giant hole in the ice, which is what Admiral Byrd himself discovered as the first pilot to fly over Antarctica, or the South Pole. And this is a blow up of the map of his first trip in 1929. You can see he gets to the pole and then goes about 150 miles out of his way. And it turns out that is the exact location where Brian S., who was one of Linda Moulton Howe's whistleblowers, said that he saw this giant hole in the ice. And that's where Admiral Byrd returned in 1946 at the beginning of high jump to go back to this hole in the ice. And in his diary, he describes his trip down into this inner ice region. And that's when he encounters the domain of the Ariani and meets a very advanced ET race down there as well. So, I mean, this story just gets more and more intense the more you look into it. And with Admiral Byrd being such a highly decorated and respected individual, that he would write this diary that was republished by his son and his nephew after he died. So he was given a gag order never to talk about it ever again. And then he starts giving these interviews where he talks about the land beyond the pole. And he's dead within months of that Longines radio interview. Not only himself, but his son. A lot of people don't realize his son was a junior officer in the Navy and accompanied his dad to Antarctica during Operation High Jump. So his son knew everything just as he did. Now his son lives then another 30 years. They both die at the age of 68. And the son was on his way from Boston to Washington, D.C. on a train. He goes missing on the train because he's about to give a keynote speech about commemorating his dad and all the achievements down in Antarctica. He goes missing off the train, and then a month later is found dead, wearing a different set of clothes. Obviously had been riled up a bit, and the best they could say is he died of starvation and malnutrition and exposure. So this is a very dangerous field to be getting into really knowledgeable disclosure about what's going on down there. And also because Byrd was very good friends with James Forrestal. And here's a picture of Byrd returning from high jump, giving Forrestal a stuffed penguin. And Forrestal knew everything too, because they were good buddies from the Navy.
They pushed him out a window at in Bethesda at the hospital. Blamed it on him being senile.
Right.
Admiral Forrestal.
Forrestal, after Byrd gets back, and he's walking up the hallways of the Pentagon saying, "There are still Nazis down there. We can't do anything. We can't get out of them. They got UFO technology." And Truman said, "All right, enough's enough. Send him to Bethesda." And he kept talking to the nurses and the doctor's staff, and then they suicided him. It's been said that James Forrestal is the first casualty in the UFO cover-up.
Wow.
And Byrd and his son, not far behind.
Unreal. Brad, what else is next for you? And the link is on the screen, cccpublishing.com. For anybody who doesn't know, you put a triple W in front of that. That'll take you to the website to get the book, and Brad will autograph it if you order it from cccpublishing.com. Now, in our last show, it was pre-order, November 30th. I ordered 5-6 books, and they all came and showed up. I appreciate it and gave them out. I've got my own copy here, and I highly encourage people as well. Like order several copies, because then you can gift it to friends, family, and obviously retain one signed and autograph from Brad personally too. What's coming up next for you over these let's say 60 days until between now and July 4th? What's on your schedule?
Well, a whole bunch of conferences I'll be talking at, and getting my book signed off the website or meeting me at one of these conferences is really the only way to get a signed copy. But coming up next, I'll be at the New Living Expo in San Rafael, California in 2 weeks.
Nice.
That's in the Bay Area of California. Then I'm flying out to New York for the New York Awakening conference at the end of April. Then I have, I'm going to give my talk about the German U-boats under the ice in Germany to a German audience, being translated live.
Wild.
And that's in the middle of May. And then I fly back. I go to Contact in the Desert in Indian Wells, California, down by Palm Springs at the end of May.
Yep.
Then I turn around and head right on back to Europe to the Bosnian Pyramid Conference, which I hope you're going to be able to attend as well.
Me too.
Yeah.
It'd be amazing. Absolutely
You
amazing.
got the time, Brad. I'm going to take another week off after the conference and go out to Croatia and go kick it on the shore. Billy Carson's a speaker there too. I'm trying to get him to come as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And get a little sailboat and go in Croatia. It's a great time. I've got good friends of mine there from Canada, went to university together, and they're wide awake. When the lockdowns happened, they sold their home in Toronto and moved to Croatia and brought their kids there. They're pretty awake that way. So yeah, it's a beautiful place. All right. Good to know. Great consideration. And I'll see what I can get going. And I'll talk to Dr. Sam here shortly. Well, thank you for everything that you do. And once again, everybody, make no mistake, this is dangerous work telling this truth still. It's not over, right? So, put out prayer, good energy, and intention for Brad, all of his authors, and all the people who he works with who are still on the front lines of disclosing truth, which has not yet been acknowledged at governmental levels. And whistleblowers are the only way for us to get to learn until enough of us stand up and say, enough's enough. Here's Brad's book. Here's this. Here's Laura's book. Here's that. So we want all this in our schools. We want our kids to know the truth, and we want full disclosure all across the board. We're ready. I think the public's ready for that, Brad. That's a final point for me, a question I had. Do you feel the public is ready at this point in time?
Overdue. Long overdue. Yeah. So remember they did the War of the Worlds radio broadcast, almost 100 years ago in the late 1930s, Orson Welles, and people freaked out, but the Brookings Institute said, see, we can't reveal to the public. Well, we've grown up since then.
That's right.
And disclosure comes from the ground up. This is really a grassroots movement. We don't really need the government to confirm everything we already know about it, but it would be nice, as well as if they would release some of the technology, most especially free energy.
That's where it comes from. Yep.
And that would be great too. Yep. So we'll see what comes of it, but I really do think we're on the verge of a big, meaningful disclosure for the whole world, and it could benefit us all.
I mean, just last week, I wouldn't have thought that you and I'd be sitting here saying there's robots at the White House, right? And they did the full disclosure on that. AI brain chips, 6G, that's all come out from the White House the last few days too. So, this is next, and look forward to it, because yes, disclosure on the technology, as well as removing the ability for us to not go into these places, to investigate, to visit for ourselves. Enough's enough.
Yeah.
Right. It's time to get out there and maybe run more tours back to the Icy Continent after the Bosnia Pyramid Conference. Thank you so much, Brad, everybody. Please like and share the show, get it out there, and grab several copies of Secrets of Antarctica from this incredible man, the Indiana Jones of our time, which I agree. And Dr. Michael Salla calls you, which is amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah. Always great to connect with you.
Cool.
Thanks for
hang out for a minute as soon as I hang up on the live stream here, Brad, if you don't mind.
Bet.
Cool. Thanks for joining us on the program, ladies and gentlemen. Please like,
follow, subscribe, share this with 9 friends and family. And of course, if you enjoy our blinged Buddha firing red pills from his 9mm, let us know.